Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Man on Second podcast. My name is Eric Wiedeke. As always, I am joined by Joe Frisaro. And Joe, disappointing one today as the Marlins dropped this one 7-3. Not the way you wanted to end the 25th anniversary weekend of the '97 World Series team.
Yeah, it's kind of a disappointing finale for an otherwise really positive weekend for the
Yep.
organization to bring back members and honor the 1997 World Series title team 25 years later. Good to see everyone there. At the park. I was there Friday and Saturday. Not there today. But we'll get into that at the end of this podcast more in depth about that team and what it meant. But let's kind of hit on today, and it's kind of your thoughts. It was kind of the same old story. The Marlins had a chance to take 2 of 3 and send everybody out on a pretty positive note from that was here for the celebration. But kind of seen this story before. Elieser Hernandez, some spotty starting pitching, offense doesn't do a whole lot, and they end up with another loss.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a tough one to swallow. Eliezer, uh, it's getting to a point with him where and I know everybody wants to see Max Meyer, and I'm not so certain he's the one that would get the call in any case. I know there's a lot of speculation going on. We're really not going to get too much into that. Um, but as far as Eliezer goes, I mean he's extremely limited. Um, it just even from a stuff standpoint, when you throw 91 or 92 like he does, you have to spot your pitches really well. Because if you miss and you miss in the zone, you give up a lot of home runs if you're throwing 91, and
Right.
that's what happens with Eliezer.
Yeah.
Um, eh, and so it's just a matter of, you know, what is the plan with him, and it's something that you kind of alluded to. So I'm gonna let you kind of go into that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. He's got back end. He's basically a hybrid. He's either a fifth starter, long reliever, and he is who he is.
Right.
And we were talking beforehand. His first time through the order ERA is 8.18. Second time 4.50. So he's given up runs either way. Third time through 7.94. My point is he really shouldn't be seeing many third time throughs. I think he's more of an opener. I think he's more of a 1, 2, 3 inning guy because the fourth inning max because he's rarely going 5 innings. Even last year, I think his high last year was like 5 1/3 or 5 2/3. This year, yes, he had one of the 7 starts go 6 innings, but pretty much he's in that 4 to 5 inning range, and that's when the trouble gets. And I think that's when you got to get people up. Like I was saying, you gives up the home run to Jace Peterson with a 3-1 lead, makes it 3-2. To me, he's out of the game right there.
Right.
But no, he sticks around. He gives up the second home run to Colton Wong. Now he's given up 10 home runs in 33 and 2/3 innings. A year ago, 13 homers and 51 and 2/3 innings. So the more looks these teams are getting. Okay, so now what does that mean? What do you do with him? Because I think he's fine in a role, and I'm bringing up today, if people watch the Tampa Bay Rays, they went with Jeffrey Spriggs for 4 and 2/3 innings, handed the ball over to Matt Whistler for an inning and a third. Rays went on and won that game. The Rays are notorious for this. Ryan Yarbrough, an opener, already like his last 3 starts, 2 1/3 innings, 5 innings pitch, and 3 and 2/3. These are the type of starts I think we should see from Elieser Hernandez. Whether you decided with that role, say it's a hybrid where you almost make it a spring training piggyback game. You go Elieser 3, Cody Petit 3, or whoever if you want to bring Daniel Castano up to do something like that. I think they have to think differently how to use Elieser Hernandez. Or if you want to go somebody else as an opener for an inning or two and put him in for 3 to 4, however you want to do it. But the way they're doing it, treating him like he's a regular starting pitching as part of a rotation, it's an old school thinking. The Rays constantly do this. They have Fleming they've used for a couple of starts. Some of these guys with the Rays, I think Springs, I brought him up just a while ago, Jeffrey Springs,
Yeah.
7 games, 3 starts.
Yeah.
That's to me Elieser. 7 games, 3 starts. You pick your matchups. Because I did a deep breakdown, before we did the show. 8.49 Ks through 9, 2.73 walks per 9. Those are fine. His numbers, lefties and righties, their splits are almost identical, except for lefties slug a little bit higher. But a lot of his numbers are the same. He's not dramatically different, but it comes down to quality of stuff. And like you say, little margin for error. You match him up against lineups that may chase, be overly aggressive. He could throw some soft stuff there. I even looked at his last year. His four-seam fastball was hit as much as it is this year. Like the batting average against is not that much different. So it's
right.
A lot of the metrics are the same. I like him. I think he has value, but they have to use him differently.
Yeah, I think in the role that he's being used, it's a disservice to particularly a team as offensively limited as the Marlins, because you're not. It just you're putting your team in the hole every fifth day that you try to stretch him out 5-6 innings, and it's getting to the point where it is, you need to either get creative with him or find somebody else if you really want to stick to that. I need my starter to go 5-6 innings, because he's not going to be that guy. But there are ways you can use him to make him effective, but it's not going to be in that way.
Correct. And 4 out of his 7 starts have been less than 5 innings.
Yeah.
So that it speaks to it. I thought today, this is what reminded me, and this is where my blood was kind of boiling as this game went on today, because Brandon Woodruff of the Brewers went 5 innings, and then they went to Aaron Ashby, and we all know how good the back end is with Hader and Williams with the Brewers, but they just gave the ball to Aaron Ashby, who's started some this year, went 4 innings, picks up a 4-inning save, but it was a 2-pitcher game.
Yeah.
By the Brewers, and they have a great lockdown bullpen. And it's like the Marlins just don't win games except for the same way. Starting pitching does really well. They scratch out a couple of runs. They have the occasional game like Saturday where they broke out with 2 4-run innings, or the game in Arizona when they hit 8 runs in the 9th inning after blowing the lead in the 8th or whatever. That's they don't consistently score.
Right.
So they have a big inning. They kind of win. They kind of win 3-2. Or eat Sandy and then hang on, just get a few runs and win. They don't win any other way. They don't win shootouts. They don't win. Wild ones. They don't. They seem to lose the 1-0 game. So again, you got valuable pitcher in Elieser Hernandez. I think you're doing the disservice by sticking to, as you noted, kind of pigeonholing him into a more traditional role. I think they have the inventory of pitching to settle a lot of their troubles. They just have to, come up with a strategy. Tampa Bay does it all the time. Other teams do. It's a traditional role of give me 6, Elieser, when he's not a 6-inning pitcher. He's barely a 5 1/3 inning pitcher. It's not the old way of doing it. You got Sandy and Pablo have been logging a lot of innings. They could do that. But I think what scrambles this up and why I think he's going to stick in the rotation, for one, if you listen to Donnie's postgame quotes, it seemed like, and keep in mind, this isn't Donnie's call. This is the organization's call. He's sending the message that, they're sticking with him, and that's fine. You're going to need him. You're going to need all these pitching. And we see why, because today, Jesus Luzardo goes on the IL with, a left forearm strain. They're acting like it's no big deal. It's retro a few days back. I believe he could only, if all goes well with 3 off days, he could be back in a week or so at Atlanta if they choose, as early as Atlanta if they choose to insert him there. But I just tell you this, I'm always hesitant when a pitcher is shut down and then all of a sudden you say he's all well and good. Whether we hope he's fine, but he's had Tommy John surgery in the past, so you hope the elbow and the forearm, I should say forearm, but that kind of leads to the elbow and so forth. You hope he's okay, but I'm not rushing that.
Right, and that's and to be fair to the team, as far as at least today goes, that's probably one of the reasons why you didn't see them go to a guy like a Petit out of the bullpen to give you a few innings, particularly when Elieser, started to struggle in the fourth inning, because you don't know if you're going to need him in a couple days to make a start. Uh, so from that perspective, they were in a little bit of a difficult situation. But even still, I think that they have at least a quantity of pitching that they could have. I don't think it would have been too much of an over reliance to bring a guy on to start uh the fourth inning or after that first home run came from Peterson. I do think they were a little bit late on that hook for sure.
Yeah, I kind of think they could have because they've known that Luzardo's
Right.
been, and you could account for the recent off day allows him to go with Sandy tomorrow. You could go to AAA and get somebody. You could find you can make that a bullpen day then if you want. So you could have done some things today and get him out after 3 innings, 4 innings. But if it's Poteet would have been the one. But it's again, it some of these decisions again. I know everyone wants to see Max. Um, I kind of am not for Max coming right now because if you've already made it clear you have a Max Meyer plan, and that plan is he starts and he's being groomed for whenever. And if he's not scheduled to be here, I wouldn't make him. I'd wait to see how the Luzardo thing plays out, and it just seems to be rushed to get him on the 40 man and get him here and so forth. Um, I know people will say, but they're going it for this year. I think they're going to have to kind of be realistic what they really are. And, is this really a playoff team or is this a team striving to be close to the 500? But they have not shown yet. They haven't really hit their stride. They had the 7-game win streak, but really haven't had any traction in the last 2 weeks. That I would be a little guarded because they've been guarded all along with Max Meyer. Why would you change now? Because now that's a desperation play.
Right. I think as far as that goes with Max, I do have my questions as to, obviously they have a plan, and you know clearly there is some plan with Max. I know that organizationally every team has a plan for their top prospects. That said, um and I don't know if it's to do with Super 2 service time, things of that nature. That stuff kind of goes over my head a little bit, quite frankly. Um but I understand the want for Max Meyer, because you kind of feel as though, oh man, things are kind of slipping. We need some sort of infusion of energy, something like that. I can understand that from the fan base perspective, but at the same time, organizationally, you're right. They do need to kind of sit back and take inventory. Um, but at the same time, how I guess when it's compared to the messaging coming into the season, it does create kind of a you know are you giving up on the season? You know.
I think you almost have to right now. You can't. Oh, because Elieser struggled and Luzardo's has some discomfort. Now all of a sudden Max is saving the season. It's like
Right.
it's kind of after they've been super careful with him, they never really, Yes, I get in. They're not going to put him in the bullpen. They didn't make a plan for a bullpen with him, so putting him in a bullpen now would have been disastrous. So you stretched him out, and I agree. You could even, and I've said this, you could go 3 innings with him if you feel that he needs to be moved along. If you're monitoring innings or whatever, make a piggyback Meyer Elieser game or whatever you wanted to do. There are, to me, creative ways that you could get him up here and do that. They haven't thought that way. Again, you may need all this because Luzardo, we don't know. The hope is he's fine, but I almost think you got to wait and see because if you're only going to do a spot start, which is Tuesday, and it sounds like that could be a bullpen or a Poteet, or if they wanted to go down up to Jacksonville and bring in Castano or somebody for that start, you could do that, and then wean Max in maybe the next time through if it looks like Luzardo is going to be more extended. You could go that route. There are ways of doing it. I think I would be guarded moving Max up like immediately. If you know what I mean? It's like, don't just get Max here and let's say Luzardo's fine, and next thing you know, you're like, okay, well, we're really, I get, yes, you could slide him in for Elieser, but their plan has been so confusing to me, at least with Max, that that you either wanted him here or not. Now all of a sudden, yes, I get it. Plans change based on injury. Your plan's only as good as who's available a lot of times. And if he's the one available, then you could start the clock. And in answer to your the Super 2, that's gone away. The new CBA has kind of made it. They could. That's my point. With a lot of those guys, you could have had a lot of these guys up real early if you had some sort of plan. If you're going with who's your best, and again, they've been so hesitant to bring him up now. I would hate to see them do something that triggers him to get out of rhythm and you mess him up, physically more than mentally. Just whatever plan it is, get him in lined up. But I don't think I'd bring him up for a potential spot start that could go away in a couple of days or a week, I should say.
I mean, realistically, and I've kind of gone back and forth on this, and this is a little bit of I guess, an aside here. Since Cabrera has gotten back up to AAA, I think at least organizationally it would make more sense to see him debut at the major league level this year before Max. It just makes more sense seeing that he's been at the major league level before. So they might not be as hesitant to kind of make that call on him if need be. But I like you said, it wouldn't be worth calling up Max just for one start and then sending him back down to AAA. That's no way to do anything, with a really highly regarded prospect.
Yeah. Like I said, I think that'll sort itself out, but I think they may have to be careful because they've been very fortunate with injuries, but I've seen a few years ago when they went 60, 70 games with the same rotation, only team in baseball, to hold everyone in order when they had Urania here. And the next thing you know, 3/5 of the rotation went on the IL within like 5 days of each other. And so they're going to have to kind of keep this stuff in mind, that who they need down, up at AAA, who they need here, because you're always one start away, one feeling a little discomfort away. And let's say it is a more extended thing with Luzardo, then you're going to have to look and see, are you prepared to bullpen it? Are you ready for Edward, or does Max go there? Either way, now you're messing with Elieser and with Max and Elieser, and next thing you know, Luzardo could be gone a while, and Elieser has to stay. I think they kind of need to see in the next 7-8 days if there's an indication that Luzardo is not going to be very long, or if he is, kind of play that one by ear, in my opinion. But as the pitching is, all this said, the pitching still is good enough. I mean, they are. Right. Absolutely. They are literally 10th in major leagues in team ERA, and where they're moving up a little bit, getting a little bit better offensively. We've talked about this. I'm keeping it simple on some offensive stats, and we're looking at runs, just runs scored. I'm not going to overcomplicate it. I'm not going to get excited about whatever metric makes me feel good for my argument. Simply runs scored. Yeah, they're tied for 16th with 141. Now, that's better. Like I've mentioned many times, get to kind of middle of the pack, at least offensively, in runs, preferably closer to the upper third, be in the upper third in pitching, and you put yourself in a spot to be one of 12.
Right.
But I did some math. They are on pace. Last year, they scored 623 runs, was 29th in baseball out of 30 teams. Pathetic, right? This year, they're on pace right now for 672 runs. And guess what? Last year, that still would be in the bottom third in baseball. From last year's playoff teams, 7 of the top 10 offensive teams in scoring runs went to the postseason.
Right.
And I think the Brewers were like 12th, but the Yankees and Cardinals, surprisingly, because you think they had good lineups, they finished 19th and 20th last year. Yankees had 711 runs, Cardinals 706 runs. My point is, Marlins are on pace for, what did I say?
672, I believe.
672. Yeah, they're on pace for that. Yeah, 672. They got to be over 700 runs. They got to be closer to about 720 runs to be there and still pitch at the level they're pitching at right now to really put yourself in position to have the kind of offense to get to the postseason. And I think a lot of people, I'm tired of one-run loss talk and bad luck and ninth inning ERA nonsense. It's the bullpen's a separate thing. You could address that individually. It doesn't dismiss the fact that this offense isn't scoring enough runs. And even with an improved offense, Jazz is the only one at 904 OPS over 800 OPS. And 800 is pretty good, but then you got Aguilar at 757, Cooper 727, Soler, who's starting to hit some homers with little else, 674, and Garcia 533. So this is not an offense that's scoring enough.
Anderson doesn't qualify, I assume.
I didn't see him on the list there. So what's Andy? Andy would have been.
He's like 18 right now.
Okay, yeah. He's missed so much time. Probably I was just looking at that.
Okay.
But yeah, I did a Fangraphs thing. But that's fair because Andy missed some time. But you're right. I'll give him a quick look. But but even so, the point's being made. No, he's 797. So he's not even 800 OPS either. But I'd take 797 from all these guys.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But again, you got to be there. These are some of the bigger picture numbers rather than selectively looking if Cooper had a good week and say his weighted runs created plus were better. That type of stuff. Runs scored matters. And, the World Series champ Braves, I think, were 8th last year in runs.
Yeah, and to be fair, I know that the Marlins are 16th in runs scored. But here's the thing that really, I think, frustrates me, and I think it frustrates a large portion of the fan base. You score 8 runs in the 9th inning against Arizona. You go off for 9 runs yesterday against the Brewers. Spread that out a little bit. Yeah. It feels like a majority of their runs are concentrated in these games where they'll have this offensive outburst, and I would trade that for a little bit of consistency a million times over. Because if you can count on the offense to score, between 3 and 5 most nights, I think they would be fine.
Yeah, I think they're averaging giving up 3.8 runs a game or something, whatever it is. And so, if you get 4 runs a game on average, you're going to win. You win your share. Again, I think that's why I think 9th inning ERA could be very misleading because you knock someone's closer out because they had a bad thing. Normally, the guy coming in afterwards is pretty much not a high leverage guy. So you add on some runs there that inflates a number. And what are you doing? You're beating up kind of marginal pitching. Yes, the closer usually is pretty good, but not all the closers have been very good this year either. Maybe their reputations are good, but it's like you sometimes this team, they do well against mediocre pitching, but a lot of teams do. And right now, a lot of the pitching has been the bullpens around the league are so much better because there's so much velo in the sport. But I do think in June, late May, June, when, we're getting that time, temperatures warm up, pitching is, kind of breaks down a little bit. Got some guys come, AAA call-ups. The numbers, the offensive now, all these players now are getting that 100-plus plate appearances. That's usually an early gauge for when the hitters start getting a little more dialed in. So I think the climate's right for the offense to pick up. And I think they will. I think the Marlins will score their share. I still don't know. Are they going to score close to 750 runs, in my opinion, 25 to 50 runs to be a team that's going to be legitimately there that you can trust? Because the teams that go to the playoffs usually have pretty good offenses. Like we talked about before, there's a kind of built for a low scoring, high leverage, type of team. And if your pitching is off that night or your ninth inning guy is off that day, you've lost the game that could have been won.
Yeah, and it's the short answer is yes, I believe the offense will improve. No, I'm not. I'm not sold that they're going to be in that 750, 725 range, but I do think they will improve. I think you've already started to see improvements from certain guys, and you hope for their sake that begins to carry over. Um, the Marlins, obviously Luzardo goes down, and they bring up Lewin Diaz to I guess I don't know what they're bringing him up exactly to do, but in theory he could help the offense, especially considering that they did lose a left-handed bat when Wendell went down for a little while. So adding another left-handed bat is certainly welcome for this lineup at the moment. But like you said, I mean, it all comes down to this team 99% of their problems could be attributed to they need to score more runs.
Yeah, they make everything easier. And a team that didn't struggle scoring runs was that 1997 Miami Marlins team. And we're gonna wrap this podcast up by talking about that. And just I would like to see more of these players around the ballpark in general. It was good to see Jazz over there talking to Gary Sheffield. And, I caught up with Gary yesterday and I asked him, I said, what would have happened had that team been held together? And he told me, and you can see the look in his face, he's like, he honestly believes they would have won more and that they were building a dynasty. Now, going back in time and how the legacies of two franchises have flipped. The New York Yankees in 1998 won the World Series. The Marlins of 97 were broken up, lost 108 games in 98. Let's say the Marlins could have put a team in there that maybe you don't go back to back because that's awfully hard. But remember, the Yankees won like 4 out of 5 or 3 or 4 in a row, whatever it was. Maybe the Marlins could have dethroned the Yankees or maybe changed that Derek Jeter dynasty era had that team stay together. And like Gary said, and you could see the hurt from him was that team, those players, when they talk about it, to this day, it hurts them that they never were given the opportunity to defend the title. And that, obviously we know what it did for the market. It introduced the word fire sale, and the organization has kind of been going through revisions every few years and roster turnovers.
Yeah, I think you can look at it from both perspectives, really. As far as that team, it was, I mean, top to bottom, that was a really, really good ball club. Just all throughout. I mean, some of the guys that they had, and it's not like they were a particularly old team too. I mean, sure, they had a lot of veterans, but I wouldn't call them, by any stretch of the imagination, an old team. So I think they could have, at the very least, they would have put together, a 4 or 5 year run where, maybe they're not winning the World Series 3 out of 5 years, but they're in the postseason. They're competing. They're a competitive ball club, and to that end, it takes those 5, 6, 7 year stretches to really, build a fan base. So I think from both perspectives, I think you see in that time period. Now, granted, Dave Dombrowski did a fantastic job building the Marlins. But at the same time, it's a matter of that team would have continued to compete at a really high level, and I don't know if the ensuing 25 years plays out the way that it does. I think baseball in South Florida in general looks a lot different.
Yeah, and maybe they get their stadium in a different, with different, waves of popularity. If all of a sudden you're drawing 3 million, a couple of years in a row, and the need for their own ballpark. Um, like I said, we'll never know. Obviously, we do know
Right.
what happened, and the amazing thing is 5 years after '97,
Exactly. Yep.
'03 comes around, they win it again. Now that's the team I'm more familiar with. That I started at MLB.com in '02, so I was more embedded with and part of the '03 team, and of course that was broken up after the '05 season, and so we wouldn't have had all those memories there, but they Dombrowski's era signed Miguel Cabrera.
Yep.
I mentioned to Gary Sheffield, and you could tell, he it meant a lot for him to wear that Marlins uniform. I said, Chef, you weren't even in your prime yet in '97. You were just getting there. And he did note to your point about, yes, they had some veterans. He said we had some veterans that we could have turned over and replaced, but then obviously when they let Miguel Cabrera go and obviously
Right.
all the others, it led to just where this organization could have been had they held it together. And we see the price that it's paid, but that's just one aspect of it. What we do know is it was great to see all of them. That team put the Marlins on the map. They fifth year in existence, they were World Series champs. At the time, it was a record. The Diamondbacks in '01 in their fourth year did it. Won the World Series, but that doesn't take away from what the '97 team did. Jim Leyland, just to see the love that those players have today and the way they treat Jim Leyland, and what he mentioned. I mentioned how does he feel personally that all these players are so outwardly, now Leyland, I believe, is 77 years old or 76 years old, and he said he was a player professionally, but not a very good one. So he always realized just how hard it is to play this sport. So he always made a point of treating even, everyone on that bench and on that roster with a lot of dignity. And when he
Right.
had to be tough, he was, but he also would individually talk to them all. You need a day off. Is everything okay at home? And then when it was time to play, be demanding. That Jim Leyland is credited with a lot. So I think he's kind of the grand, as much as Jack McKeon's kind of the fatherly figure of South Florida baseball. Jim Leyland really is, to me, the grandfather of Marlins baseball, because he's the first to do it and lead that '97 team. And everyone says that team doesn't win it without him. And he was the right person to lead. And great memories, great to see them all. And I hope a lot of people that were at the park or really appreciate how good it was. And before we sign off, Eric, Leland said he thinks that team doesn't get enough credit because to get to the World Series, they had to get by the Braves and they had to beat Greg Maddux twice, uh,
Yep.
John Smoltz, and Tom Glavine. They beat 4 Hall of Famers to win that series in 6. I know everyone likes to talk about Levon and a generous strike zone in Game 6, but they won games. Make
Yep.
no mistake, it wasn't just Eric Gregg's wide strike zone. They defeated 3 Hall of Famers and one of them twice. They had to
Yep.
get 4 wins against 4 Hall of Famers. And he said, had any other team kind of done that, that would have set up Game 7 against the Indians as an all-time World Series classic. It is a classic, and it gets mentioned and all that. But obviously, it's a lot different than the Reggie Jackson 3-homer game, when the Yankees won, and that wasn't a Game 7, I believe, but it was a closeout game. But that Marlins team and what they accomplished in that Game 7 should be something that this market's proud of and that historically receives its due.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think, and I think you're right. I think they don't get the credit that they really deserve. I don't know if that's just because I couldn't tell you exactly why that is. Just don't ask Bob Costas what he thinks about it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
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 Yeah.
That's part of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like the people, and I like the Ken Burns documentaries on the history of baseball. And I'm from New York originally, but like 80% of that is Yankee and Met and New York Giants and New York or New York, Boston or Chicago. Even when they talked about that, the the Cubs. The Marlins winning in 03 was the Cubs failing to get there. It
Right.
wasn't the Marlins winning. It is the market we live in, and we are, but that shouldn't dismiss, these teams. The two championships the Marlins have were well deserved, and we make no apologies, and proud to be certainly part of 03 and more on the fringe in 97. I wasn't on the beat daily back then, but I did cover
Right.
some of their games. But that's why we're those. You just wish that people really appreciated it, and more of those guys were around the ballpark to talk to the younger players and just remind people here that Major League Baseball in South Florida is important. One reason why I'm doing these podcasts, and happy to have you and Mike doing them with me, the younger generation, whatever stories or assets or resources I could provide you as you move on in your professional career is part of why I'm doing this, to spread that word. And it was fun. I wrote a nice story in the Palm Beach Post on it. I'm doing a lot of freelance stuff for them. So check it out there. And before you sign out, obviously check out dugoutmugs.com/man on 2ND. Eric, we're waiting for some more Marlin wins, but they got the Nationals coming on board. This should be a better week ahead, we hope. But we're here bringing heat and bringing really good info, I think, and high quality podcast. And appreciate you, and take us out of here.
Absolutely. So you can find this and all of our other full-length podcasts at the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel, as well as on Twitter. You can follow us at Man on Second. That's going to be at Man on 2ND. We have the replays of the podcasts, and we also provide commentary there, so feel free to check that out. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you next time.